Hello all, and thank you so much for joining our session at this year's Financial Inclusion Week. I am Ame Kwamwa, and I serve as Director of Market Engagement for Digital Innovations at Opportunity International. As we gather for our panel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep in Malawi? I'd like us to pause and reflect upon the visionary work of those who have contemplated the impact of artificial intelligence on the world at large. Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer for whom our panel derived its name, regularly contemplated how our world will react to the transformational power of technological advances like machine learning and AI. Today, we explore a similar dream, that of integrating AI technology to impact rural agriculture for last-mile smallholder farmers. And while many fear an unknown future shaped by dramatic technological shifts in our economy and society, we practitioners look forward to a future with hope. But it requires dedication to a more inclusive, equitable, and prosperous world. And we are hopeful. We are hopeful because we have seen the positive impact of digitization move countless number of people out of poverty. In over a decade, digital innovation has been at the crux of the advancement of livelihoods, especially in developing countries like the one I come from in Ghana, and also in Rwanda, the country where I'm sitting right now. A clear case of this is the advent of mobile money in sub-Saharan Africa, which has been a driver of account ownership and usage for women. This phenomenon has helped bridge the gender gap in account ownership, with data from the Global Findex showing a 3% drop from 6% to 9%, where it had hovered for many years. The expansion innovation has spurred the use of big data, machine learning, and geospatial data being deployed in all facets of society, from education to health, finance, agriculture, and so many more. For Opportunity International, we are constantly working to leverage technology through our partners to serve our clients who fall within the category of the most marginalized in society. Through our ongoing envisioning work, we aim to apply AI to massive data sets, leveraging behavioral data to build virtual credit scoring systems, using IoT sensors for soil analysis and crop timing, among many others, to build sustainable economic paths for our clients. But developing these technologies that create the positive outcome we all seek starts with putting the people we serve at the core of our work. For Opportunity International's Digital Innovation Group, the foundation of our product development is based on human-centered approaches and strategies, building trust networks and providing our practitioners with valuable data on their lives, challenges, and strengths of the individuals we serve. Human-centered design is not a new concept, and Opportunity's own practices have led with strength-based tactics for years. Our farmer support networks, FSAs, in Sub-Saharan Africa have used human-to-human engagement as the guiding light for our financial inclusion efforts for years. In connecting with people, understanding their needs, and the opportunities they seek, we can design pathways to prosperity. And now, as we build upon the power of AI and machine learning, we are learning more and faster than we've ever had, creating an essential feedback system for the technologies we develop. A case in point is our artificial intelligence partner, Ulongizi, for farmers and FSAs, which we'll be throwing more light on during this conversation. For my panelists in their respective roles, they will highlight the reality on the ground with regard to how they are leveraging AI to improve the challenges many, especially in Africa, are facing. They will talk through some of the wins, the challenges, but also what the future looks like for AI utilization and how we can ensure there is economic, geographic, and gender-based equity through our development and implementation. But first, a story. I'd like to begin by introducing my colleague and the head of Opportunity International's Digital Innovation Group, Chief Technology Officer Greg Nelson, who can help us understand how opportunity got to these questions in the first place. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Amma. And I'm guessing some of our guests today are Blade Runner fans. We're not going to show the movie, but you're welcome to watch it after our panel. Let me begin, though, with a premise, an idea from another futurist, William Gibson. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Today, there is really no reason, in my view, in our view, that a farmer in Nairobi should be operating in a fundamentally different way than a farmer in Nebraska. We have new tools, we have new capabilities, and we can enable smart farming at scale with rapidly diminishing costs anywhere in the world. And we can make those tools available to anyone, starting with the examples that we'll show today. So why is that true? There are three inflection points, and each of these is powerful in its own right, but the combination of these is truly transformative. First, cloud services. Not long ago, these were really the stuff of science fiction, that device in your pocket or your purse that can recognize your face and unlock itself only for you. That used to be in Star Trek or in the Bond movies. We can map any location on Earth and understand its potential for agriculture. On the other end, smart devices, and those connect to apps, of course, and sensors, and they enable real-time experiences, they help decision-making. And then in the middle are platforms which bind those capabilities to those devices, and those enable real-time collaboration, they enable training, they enable all kinds of things that can help smallholder farmers. So the rate of advancement in each of these areas is amazing. I mean, it's truly remarkable. And it gives us the opportunity to rethink the ways that we do our work. We can do things today faster, we can do them more cheaply. Frankly, we can just do them better. So how do we do that work here at Opportunity? Let me just say a few words about that. This is a map of our digital innovation program here at Opportunity International, the process we use. And as Amma mentioned, we began with human-centered design. That's how we stay grounded in the reality of the people that we serve. And we choose challenges to work on that they actually care about. I won't talk about this method in detail since our time is short, but staying grounded in the people you serve is very important when you hear things like the pop media narrative that, oh, AI is scary, or it's the end of the world as we know it. AI is a tool, and we don't fear tools. We learn their best purpose, and we understand how to use them responsibly. I mean, you can use a hammer to build a house, you can use a hammer to break a window, but we'd all agree that hammers are really good tools. So our panelists will talk about how to use AI in good ways and also how to avoid its pitfalls. And there are some for sure, but we are optimistic. I mean, this is one of the most powerful tools that we've seen in our lifetimes to help people at the bottom of the economic pyramid to build their own sustainable livelihoods. So, what do we do with that process? We begin by building personas of our clients, and we try to design solutions which matter to them and have the potential to solve real problems at scale. We have a design phase, we have a measurement phase. After we implement, we evaluate the winners and see whether to continue, and if so, back to the beginning for the next design cycle. And in every phase, we have rapid learning loops, which help us to experiment and then to concentrate efforts on the most promising ideas. The promising ones get more resources, the ones that don't work, we archive, and we document what happened so we don't repeat experiments that didn't work. And of course, we accept a reasonable failure rate, because sometimes you don't really know what's going to break until you're in the field or when you start to scale. That's our methodology. So Let me give you an example from our current work. In Malawi this past February and March, some of you will know or remember Cyclone Freddy, which wiped out about 90% of the soya crop in Malawi. That had been one of the most profitable crops for many of our farmers. One of our farmer support agents, Anna, and you see her in this picture, was with us this past summer as we tested some new digital prototypes, including one which used ChatGPT as a tool to answer agronomy questions. So this is Anna working with our prototype team and giving feedback on the tool. So when we asked Anna, like, well, what question would you like to ask this thing? She said, what herbicide should I use to treat soya rust? Because that was the disease that had wiped out her crop. So this prototype, which only used generic ChatGPT, no local tuning, no additional work, replied, it's not an herbicide, it's a fungicide. And here are 12 fungicides which are effective against soya rust. So Anna was amazed. Honestly, we were a little bit amazed too. But then she turned to us, and her first question to us was, when can I have this? If I'd had this answered during the cyclone, I might have saved some of my crop. And I support 150 farmers as a farmer support agent. When they know I can get them answers like this right away, they're going to think I'm a genius. So when you get feedback like that, you're on to something. So now we've built this tool, which we call Ulangizi AI, and we've improved it from the prototype to ensure accuracy. It only uses an authoritative source, which is the Malawi government's Good Agricultural Practices Manual. And we've built a version which is a bot in WhatsApp, which is what all of our farmer support agents already use on their Android phones. And we've been able to do all of this work in the past few months, and we'll be beginning a scaled pilot next month in Malawi. So that's an example of rapid learning applied to an innovation process. So we do want to show it to you today, and I'd like to do that to introduce Paul Essany, who is our head of products and innovation at Opportunity. And he is the person that both thought up this application of generative AI and brought it to life. So over to you, Paul.
Great. Thank you, Greg. If you don't mind, I just need you to stop sharing so I can share. Perfect.
You bet.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm not sure we mentioned yet, but Ulangizi is a Chichewa word for extension, which is the type of content that it provides. What you're seeing here is the web version that we use internally, but initial users will actually be accessing this through WhatsApp, something they're really familiar with. And let's say that Anna, who you met before, is talking with some of the farmers that she supports in a group meeting. They want to know something like, how can I best use my land to earn the most? Because this is a real demo, things take a couple seconds, so we'll be patient here. The types of answers we receive are all based on the Good Agricultural Practices document provided by the Ministry of Agriculture in Malawi. Here, there's a lot of information that they can absorb and they can be thinking about. So they might ask a question like, based on this, I grew maize last year. What should I grow next year? So this notes that there's, it doesn't necessarily specifically say what to grow afterwards, which is fine. And then we can say, well, what do I need if they are interested maybe in growing groundnuts with it? after this, we'll do one additional question. So this provides some of the information they might need to learn how to grow groundnuts if they're not familiar. So field preparation, the types of varietals to use, when to plant, what the spacing is, fertilizer. One thing that we want to make sure, though, is that we really constrain the responses to the information that is in the good agricultural practices. So if you ask a question like, how do I grow cacao, which is not something grown in Malawi, we can make sure that the response is that that's not an answer or something that's available within the good agricultural practices. So you can revise it and try again if you wish to. So this is a quick demo of our tool. With that, I would like to hand it back over to Amma.
Thank you so much, Greg, and also thank you, Paul, and to the team behind this. I know that a lot of work has gone into it. So I know a lot of our audience have a lot of questions about what they've just seen and heard. Please be patient. We will be getting to your questions as we go through this panel. Because we've also convened for you perspective from various sectors to discuss how we can use this technology at a time when we need it the most. Gentlemen, would you please kindly introduce yourselves? I would like to start with Anders, followed by Webster and Tim.
Many thanks, Amma. And thanks to Paul and Greg for showcasing the exciting work Opportunity has been doing in Malawi. My name is Anders Gundersen. I'm the founder and CEO of Sensonomic. As a company, we work with data analytics, predominantly in the fantastic combination of human and artificial intelligence. We work predominantly with agriculture and we work globally. I'm honored to share the space today with Webster and Tim under the safe guidance of Amma. Thank you,
Anders. Next, Webster.
Thanks a lot, Amma, and welcome all. My name is Webster Just. I'm an Agricultural Extension and Methodologies Officer under the Ministry of Agriculture, working along with District Agriculture Office, and I'm responsible for sharing technical messages with farmers, and behind me are a number of extension workers who work directly with extension workers. And where Ulangizi AI is being applied is within my jurisdiction, and they're working with my extension workers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Webster. And thanks for letting us know that in case you hear any background, it's Webster's team urging him on. Thank you so much to all of them for joining us indirectly on this panel. And finally to you, Tim.
Thanks, Amma, and greetings and a happy Wednesday to everyone. My name is Tim Strong. I serve Opportunity International as our Global Head of Agricultural Finance. I am proud to say that I'm an adopted son of Malawi and have been a resident there for nearly 17 years now. So pleased to see this initial pilot on our home turf, as I think we all strive to play for our own parish. But excited to see the results, excited to see the impact at the end of the day. Again, noting that financial inclusion is a pathway for impact, and then really developing the tools and the partnerships to scale this across our global portfolio. Amma, thank you so much for hosting us on today's session.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I would like for us to start all on the same point, us at the global crossroads where we all find ourselves. So I'm just going to first ask my question, and I'd like all three of you to answer, especially because I know you sit at very interesting points of the different sectors that AI joins. We all know that AI will disrupt many of the patterns and current service offerings we have in the financial service sector for the poor. The real question is, how do we harness the disruptive effect for good and affect the negative side effects? How can we do that? What's an example of a positive disruption? And Anders, I'll start with you, followed by Webster, and finally to you, Tim.
Thanks again, Amma. As I alluded to, it is imperative that we include human intelligence and experience and real knowledge in the work that we do with artificial intelligence. We touched upon that previously, that artificial intelligence is a tool, and it should be considered something that really augments humanity's ability to solve real problems, not as a solution in itself. You asked for a good example of positive disruption. I think that is the ability to task computers with figuring out complex parts of the problem and leave the understanding of the solution to real human beings. And as an example, in recent years, artificial intelligence has been used to figure out the incredibly complex challenge of how, for example, proteins are folded. And scientists are now using that to solve complex challenges that were just out of reach for us a few years back. In agriculture, we can see the same opportunities in predicting yields and everything that affects it, with further and further into the distance, not just in the same year, but over multiple years, fueled by complex climate models. But it's still left to humans to act on information. The way we do it, we deploy long and short-term yield optimization models based on data collected through the partners we work with. And we can even use the AI-assisted models to predict what a farmer's equivalent to a credit rating should be based on hard data. This can enable credit providers to reach 4 times as many clients as our pilot with opportunity in Uganda suggested. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you very much, Anders. Webster, next. How, in your role, do you see how we can harness AI and bring out a lot of the positive effects of it?
Thanks, Amma. First of all, I need to appreciate the fact that indeed, traditionally, the communities and farmers have been used to accessing advisory services through human-centered approaches. But with time, indeed, we have to appreciate that everything is changing. And I need to appreciate the fact that the coming in of the Ulangizi AI is indeed a solution in the right direction, whereby farmers and the farming communities will be accessing extension advisory services at a click of a button from their phone, and eventually they get it even in the absence of the physical availability of agricultural extension service officers. So in this perspective, therefore, it offers a great room that we may indeed fast track the implementation of agriculture activities, as well as access to other information that will indeed assist the farming communities to access like the lending institutions where they could get some resources that they could use in as far as procuring inputs is concerned, as well as supporting other livelihood activities. And if we are to go as a nation and indeed as a world, AI is the way to go. And indeed, because this approach is indeed user-friendly even to women, who in our country, Malawi, provide over 70% of the food that we consume. So if we really use this approach, definitely the problems of hunger that have always been rocking the world and including our country will be a thing of the past. And indeed, that will facilitate to contribute to the world as being a better place for everyone to live in. Thanks.
Thank you, Webster. Thanks for touching the issues of access to information, proximity to just sometimes extension workers, and sometimes an inadequate number of extension workers that limits the kind of information that even farmers get. Tim, finally over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Amma. So in terms of AI disruption and negative side effects, I think when we try to design the positive outcomes and the positive case studies, it comes back to how we should likely engage with everything in our lives, with humility and with gratitude. And so when we look at tools, it's important for us to be humble in terms of what are our current limitations. The design features, which Greg walked us through earlier, identify those pain points and those points of friction, which are the real opportunities. But at the same time, we also need to be humble in terms of where this has already gone wrong and make sure that we engage at that level. So when we look at general digital technology as a whole and how it's gone wrong in the hands of smallholder farmers, right? So looking at the explosion of online app-based gambling that's been really pervasive across Africa at the moment and rural Africa. Misinformation campaigns across social media and WhatsApp, particularly poignant as we watch the proliferation of false COVID-19 information across the continent. And then also specific for AI, I would point many of the webinar attendees to the American writer Brian Christian, who did an amazing summary of case studies in his nonfiction book, The Alignment Problem. So as we look at design, how do we look at the inherent bias that's already prevalent in training data, the extreme speed of progress? What does that mean in terms of making sure that clients are digitally literate as well as financially literate? And then the potential dangers of solutions from AI. So how do we look at the fact that it's not always possible to read the code, know that the output of the code will be even visible for the person who wrote the program. So making sure that we bear that in mind, that starts to put the borders on the sandbox in terms of what's being built and designed. For me, that's really exciting as we see numerous opportunities in terms of areas where there's a dearth of visible information. How do we work in low data context? This has been amazing for our team in DR Congo specifically, being able to get financial data that is in multiple languages where our team can't read it and to really explore how to build. But I'm going to put my microphone on mute, Amma, as I'm looking at the time counter.
Thank you so much, Tim. Webster, you raised some very interesting issues that I'd like us to go back to. How can these kinds of technology like Longizi help you achieve skill in serving farmers in Malawi? What do you need to be successful in using them? And how do you want to be involved in designing them? Webster, I believe you're on mute. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Yeah, what we have to do basically is, first of all, wherever possible, we have to provide some capacity building, especially to the existing extension workers, such that whenever our farmers may encounter some challenges in the course of using the approach, these extension workers will, in one way or the other, support them with the technical know-how. Further to that, what we should do as well is that since this approach is indeed quite fundamental in as far as supporting, closing the gap that is there of the high farmer to extension worker ratio, I believe that if we indeed apply this approach to farming communities, it will be very easy for them to access extension services as much as possible, as I mentioned earlier on during the introduction. And further to that, I would also wish that we should be involved as government in this perspective, who are in one way or the other custodians of the technologies that we really offer to our farmers, so that we do not end up in a situation whereby we are offering conflicting messages, such that when we are producing and developing these messages, indeed there must be at least an addition or an issue or some kind of an input from the government side, in this case from our side. And also I would also wish to suggest that for us to succeed in this perspective, we should also ensure that we use integrated approaches. Integrated approaches in this case will work in the because the challenges that these farming communities face are usually so complex, and if we just use a one or a reductionist approach, we may not necessarily win the war that is indeed causing some havoc among the farmers. So we need to use several other approaches. In this case, definitely will be in a better fora. And again, in this case, as I said earlier on, the Mlankizi AI approach indeed is really complementing all these efforts, because through this we are reaching out to many farmers, and indeed our Mlankizi AI approach has already done the wonders within the short period of time that has been put under test, whereby there are several good stories that are coming out from the farmers that are involved in this case. And the most interesting thing, as I mentioned earlier on, that a good percentage of food that we eat is produced by female farmers. It has shown out that most of the farmers indeed had an access to this AI, and indeed they are impressed to use it, and indeed it is indeed changing their livelihood. And for that, for sure, it is giving hope that we may have a better future. Thanks.
Thank you, Webster. Anders, I'm going to come to you, but Webster touched on something in terms of agriculture that I'd like Tim to address. As somebody who is very deeply entrenched in the world of agricultural finance, could you shed a bit of light on the rationale behind leveraging AI to support agricultural finance, particularly for smallholder farmers and for medium and small scale industries, especially in Africa? Because when it comes to agri-finance, the first word all of us hear is from our FSP partners is risk.
Yeah, Amma, you said my favorite word there, risk. But on the other side, I think for ourselves at Opportunity, it's a pretty concise solution. Our ambition and our goal and our focus is really on the need and the opportunity to increase farmer agency. So I think many people on this webinar know many of the facts and figures around agriculture and agricultural financial inclusion. but ultimately, it's fair enough to opine that smallholder farmers are the last major bastion of financial exclusion. For ourselves, the reason that our portfolio exists is centered on the key fact that smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa, in Malawi, where Webster is sitting, and where I call home, they still only produce at 20 to 30% of their potential yield. So for us, when we look at the Pareto curve, 80-20 rules, this becomes an obvious sector where the value of investments can go further. Beyond this, smallholder farmers are the backbone of the food supply and economy in developing nations. Most individuals experiencing extreme poverty make a living as smallholder farmers. So for me, a quote that resonates here is really from the former United States President Truman, that prosperous farmers make for a prosperous nation. When farmers are in trouble, the nation is in trouble. This coincides with recent political economy analyses across Africa. We know that farmers make up the majority of the voting bloc. From the perspective of the global food supply systems, smallholders make up over 80% of Africa's farms, which becomes globally significant as we compare this to the fact that 60% of the remaining unopened arable land is in sub-Saharan Africa. So, as we look at, the topic of Axiom Center for Financial Inclusion and then really the Financial Inclusion Week, we also know that only 3% of agricultural finance demand is currently met. So for all of us as practitioners and researchers on this webinar, at the end of the day, we can either view this as a significant problem or take a much more private sector lens and look at this as a significant market opportunity. So a $20 to $26 billion gap on the continent. The business case is actually quite clear in terms of the scalability of solutions. So for us, ultimately looking at investments in technology, into AI is really critical. When we look at many of the smallholder farmers in Malawi that Webster, myself, our team work with, we have to also recognize that many of the farmers have been using the same tools for more than a millennia. I like Daiborn Chibongo's quote here from in Malawi, and he was a former board member of our bank there. He used to state that the short-handled hoe is a weapon of mass urbanization. How do we really look at getting new tools in the hands to really intrigue the youth when we look at the demographic dividend that's possible there, really look at ultimately a democratizing effect with technology if it's deployed correctly. That boils back down to this idea of how do we enhance farmer agency. I do not think we need to belittle the perspective of smallholder farmers. If it's the wrong technology and the wrong tool, they won't pick it up, they won't use it. So I love the ability to have those feedback loops at the end of the day. Thanks, Amma. Amma, you're on mute, sorry.
Hi. Yes, thank you so much. Anders, my next question is to you. We have a question from our audience, but I would like for you to touch on this because I believe it's related in some ways. You and your team have successfully rolled out a pilot program that integrates public, private, and non-profit partners to reduce both barriers to lending at the last mile and risk for lenders. What does it take to establish these partnerships, and what were your findings in running this intersector project like this? Because as you know, for a lot of our financial service providers, risk is a thing they do not want to engage with at all, like Tim clearly established.
Absolutely correct, and thanks, Amma. There's an excellent question from Eduardo Totolo that I will touch upon in the closing as well. But yeah, sticking with the partnerships question, they always come around and come about because of people in the different organizations wanting the same thing. We haven't solved that part with AI yet, but that can certainly be done in the future as well to assist. But in our case, Opportunity and Sensonomic came together and saw that we could push towards achieving the same goal by combining Opportunity and their partner banks, OBOL's deep local knowledge with the technological expertise we had in our team. And simultaneously, we had good people at one of the funders for that pilot European Space Agency, who was looking for impactful demonstrations of the use of satellite technology. And when people wanted the same thing, we could set up the process, and we had something going. Even in the times of COVID, we managed to make this work because people were pushing so hard to work with it. The findings we had, is simply that we couldn't have delivered without the deep knowledge that people in the Opportunity Department Bank Global had. They helped us learn greatly about processes, needs, and wishes, not all of which we could help with, but certainly some of them we could. And it was all achievable to do remotely, but only because we had access to the great people that we worked with in Uganda. The government plays a significant role in enabling and supporting these relationships and partnerships. Access to local data is something that greatly helps these projects. A supportive environment is fantastic. Guidance to who to speak to and which pitfalls to avoid. All of those can be achieved with a great relationship with local governments. And also, I think it's an important role for governments to have a safeguard in place for the people they represent, so that eager technologists like myself have some rules and boundaries to adhere to as well. And I think the role of the fintech is to not always think about it as just a technical solution, but a people solution. We are desperately bad as a group, I think, to understand why we're solving the problems we are solving and for whom and what the impact is. We're good at technical stuff. So we need help. We need help to contextualize what we're doing. And that's simply the work that we enjoy doing with Opportunity, was that we got to spend enough time with industry experts, practitioners, and beneficiaries of the output. And I think that's the role of the NGOs that support that, so that we can spend time and money on technological development rather than our own discovery, because the knowledge is already out there and it's so embedded in organizations as Opportunity and Noble. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Thank you. Webster, what does a good relationship between government and private sector or the NGO look like when we are developing or even thinking about developing technology like AI? How should we be creating the right dialogue where everybody gets value out of the process?
Yeah, the good, relationship should be one that, respects the essence of collaborative approach in, delivering these, advisory services to farmers, because that will eventually, enable the practitioners to deliver relevant information to farmers, information that will not, bring about some kind of confusion, because they are formulated from, the same, touch base, at least with, a clear intention, at least to touch base with the farmers. And again, it's the one again that will indeed appreciate the fact that there are harnessing the kind of messages that is being, produced. Because if we do not, indeed produce the messages that are well harnessed, it will be too problematic for our farmers to grasp the relevant information. Even if we could produce better messages, but if we're not using, a well collaborated approach, it will be problematic. Further to that, we should also make sure that we use some kind of joint planning and monitoring approaches in the implementation of activities, because that is rather very crucial. Because if we happen to have noticed that there are some kind of, issues going astray, we could amend them as a team and indeed devise some, relevant mechanisms that will help in, producing, a viable solution to such, a challenge. And that notwithstanding, we should also use some kind of group approach, because this has been noted to, enhance social learning amidst the people, and that will be quite, will be very fundamental, in fact, for our community, especially in this case that we have got farmers who are mostly not, in a better position to access, these gadgets. But if they're using a group and a few of them have got such gadgets, indeed, the Ulangizi platform, for example, will really, carry our farmers forward in many sectors, such as being food secure, at least having some monies at household level that will indeed support them to buy some inputs, and indeed supporting their, children, paying some school fees. All these issues are always lacking in, in the African perspective. And if we go by that, definitely we'll have, a well-coordinated effort that will help us to win this war. Thanks.
Thank you, Webster. And I also want to address the fact that, Webster, thank you so much for being on this panel right now. Our audience probably can see that you keep moving around. We know that there was a storm in Malawi that's really impacting your technology, and the fact that, yesterday there was heavy rains and right now it's getting a bit darker. So thank you for trying to find the best place to get connectivity to stay on this panel. We all appreciate it, and I believe our audience would really appreciate you staying on still. Thank you. Tim, you raised a couple of really pertinent questions earlier on about business case, especially for ISM users, where our partners falling. But I want to first even address the data quagmire. Issues of data protection. How are we collecting the data? Someone will say the efficacy of the data itself. Can you please help us understand how can we solve this challenge? How can we make sure that we truly understand that the proper goals that we are using the data of the people that we serve, knowing the fact that we recognize the challenges and the strengths, and as well, how do we use that data to create the right tools for them?
I think Anders is really well placed to hop onto this question as well. From my side, though, I might add a few points onto this. Anders brought up the role of government as a partner within this work. So I'll just add on 3 points and then pass over to Anders on that. First, that I would like to add on is really ultimately government serves as the major ability for successfully scaling intervention. The role of government there is absolutely critical in terms of the gold star of scale. So there's a role that government can also play, to Anders' point, around standardizing data formatting. So how do we look at ensuring a machine readable environment? And very much to Anders' point, also standardizing data protection requirements. I think that's key. Anders, did you want to take the rest of that question? I might pivot and pass that to you.
Well, I'm happy to jump on sort of the more requirements of effective AI, Anna, if you're happy for me to run with that.
Yes, definitely. And if you could probably also add a bit about how geospatial data fits into the picture and why it's important to this broader challenge of improving financial inclusion, that would be fantastic.
Great, thank you very well. And thank you, Tim. And I'll start off a little bit with what artificial intelligence really is, and in our context, and it means a lot to many different people. And for us, it's a methodology which contains many parts of other methodologies or in the same family. We basically use supervised machine learning, which is currently the most useful member of the AI family. And as you see in the media right now, we have very large language models in which we have seen a specific version of it, a smaller version of it through the LNGC app, which in my mind is much more useful and safer to use. A probabilistic model cannot really be used when we talk about people's livelihoods, and if the answer is probably right, you have to have curated input and a curated corpus to be sure that it is right. And that's what I think is so amazing with the Ulangesi app, that I see that there's a realization that a specific language model is a better tool than a large language model would be. And it's also very likely that that will keep costs at a lower level. So for anyone listening, I'd urge you to look at specific or small language models rather than the generalized ones. In our work, we combine lots of different AI-assisted tools into finding a solution. So on the geospatial part, we are happy to work with that with greater computing power and with more AI assistance on figuring out if this pixel is really showing us whether or not it is coffee grown here or if it's a similar crop. The distinction is often hard, but now we're getting better and better on that on a global level. But again, it comes down to data quality, data frequency, data veracity. So there is no magic recipe yet, but AI and the understanding of how AI can be deployed has greatly helped, both using the geospatial data, which is almost as close to objective as we can come. The interpretation is never objective, but the data in itself is. And then also verified trustworthy materials, such as the input to the specific language model used in the Ulungesi app. And combining those, you have something really powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Webster. Anders, Webster, I'm coming to you because I know that one of the key challenges we have on the continent is everyone not having a smartphone. You know, what are the near-term solutions to bridge this access gap? Because to be able to get access to all of this beautiful technology, the device is important.
Yes, you are very right. It's really a greater challenge in Africa for most farming communities and most households to access these smartphones. However, as I could, recall that I mentioned earlier on, one proper way to do it could probably be to use the group approach, such that those of you that might have got these smartphones, if they're working in a group, would indeed help others to access and indeed use this application. And that would also provide some kind of a learning platform where the questions that others would have asked will have been will be used as a learning ground for others. In that way, we could indeed, in the meantime, help in responding to the existing challenges that most farmers might have by not having these smartphones. But that notwithstanding, I would also wish to suggest that we should, in one way or the other, involve the existing extension workers, since most of whom have got some smartphones, and that could also help in responding to farmers' needs whenever they go to meet them physically on the ground. And that notwithstanding, when they have got some questions and answers that may not be that reaffirming, and as far as the farmer's perspective is concerned, these extension workers will indeed provide rather a platform to reaffirm the context or the answers that farmers are looking for. And again, I would also wish to suggest that we should endeavor to lobby for data bundles that will specifically target these smallholder farmers so that they could get these or they could apply or use these platforms at a reduced cost, because we are so sure that no matter how good we may produce the messages, but if they could not manage to access these bundles, which are usually very expensive in this part of Africa, then our work will just go in vain, which is not our ultimate goal. And again, I would also wish to suggest that if we could go as fast as possible to suggest to say we should offer some soft loans to these smallholder farmers, whereby they could sign agreements to say a crop that they are producing, for example, soya, part of which of the proceeds will be used in paying back for the smartphone that they have accessed. That would be a good thing rather than giving them for free, because there might be some kind of lack of ownership in whatever they have. But if they have gotten it through that way, definitely they will indeed build a great sense of ownership to say, I really struggled for it, and indeed it's providing me with some information that I'm using to become more productive. Then I should really use it to the fullest. And that the final part that I can also wish to mention is that wherever possible, we should also endeavor to provide some smart projectors. For example, at the moment, I'm saying that we don't have power this side, but I've just switched on the smart projector. This is why you could now see my face. So these smart projectors usually could be used to have pre-recorded video messages that will be shared with extension farmers. And that notwithstanding, these smartphones also have got a room that you can Google and where ChatGPT again can be used in this perspective and provide some answer to the farming communities. That again, for your information, to woo more farmers to participate, because it is kind of in a video session, even if it is in a language that these farmers may not understand, but because farmers, but because the videos are indeed displaying, the message with action attached, they could easily understand and indeed apply, and that will reinforce learning amongst these farmers. Because in this part of Africa, they say seeing is believing. So if they see, definitely they will have learned a great deal rather than just reading the messages or hearing the voices providing the message. This is what I could say. And just further to that, the final thing is that this approach would also entice more youthful farmers to participate because of the video aspect. And if indeed we are more serious to engage the youthful farmers in this perspective, since this part of the Africa of the globe has got more youthful population, it means the future is so bright in as far as food security and indeed reducing the use of poverty is concerned. This is what I could suggest. Thanks.
And talking about seeing is believing, I know our ArcFin team have been using the videos, through our FSA network to get to more farmers, to help them, with regenerative farming practices that we know is really positive for our climate. So thank you so much. Tim, I am going to ask you back the question on the business case for our financial service providers, because there is a conundrum. You and I have been having these conversations for a very long time, but we have a comment from one of our audience that says that thanks, a very interesting panel. In ICTD for development projects, it's important to be transparent with farmers about the technology we are using, which I know at Opportunity International we are doing. I'd like you, as you talk about my question on business cases with our financial service partners, maybe also throw more light, because the question from this audience member is asking how much is too much information for farmers so as not to confuse them. But I would like to ask you the business case question. For a lot of our financial service partners, because of issues of risk with agricultural finance, they are always hesitant when we start raising the issue of capital access for farmers. In your perspective and in your many years of experience in this space, how do we ensure that both on the demand side, we are ensuring that the needs of the farmers are being met, but also on the supply side, that our partners in the financial institutions are geared to meet these needs?
Yeah, thanks, Amma. So I think that does come back to your first question to me around risk. And whenever we develop a business case for financing smallholder farmers, it does boil down to risk in terms of, yes, you can have short-term profit margins, but what happens in the next season when there is a major issue? So as Opportunity, we have the pleasure and the pain of having sat through now 15 years of business risk review. What we've identified as key and critical risks within the agricultural finance sector are effectively threefold and three principal risks. The first being the obvious one that I think everyone recognizes as production risk. Will it rain? Will it flood? Will there be droughts? Will there be fall armyworm? And really, how do we look at AI applications in the business case in that space for resolving those concerns on production risk? That's very much what this presentation has been focused on in terms of short-term gains. How do we get information in a curated fashion at the right level through a human interface to smallholder farmers in a cost-effective manner? However, there is a second principal risk in terms of market risk, which we've not yet touched on in this webinar, and I think many others would present on as a key factor. How do we look at pricing? How do we look at the delta between farm gate price and market price within a capital city and make sure that there is an opportunity for producers to capitalize on that variance? But I think what most ignores the third, and I would say most principal risk in agricultural finance, which is the internal operational risk of a financial institution. And this was really what our pilot with Anders and Centronomic was looking at. How do we increase the speed of delivery of financial access at the end of the day? Because from my vantage, it does not matter if you have the best producing farmers in the world. It does not matter if you have the best market prices. Ultimately, if the farmers that we're seeking to extend services to are reliant on rain-fed agriculture, we need to make sure that those tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of loans get out the door within a very short window. So making sure that technology applications also look to bridge the gap, specifically on loan approval turnaround, is critical. For me, we've looked at a number of different opportunities and a number of different strategies in terms of how to do that. I'm going to put our colleague Paul S&E on the spot here as well, who briefly led the demo on Ulangizi AI. And what I saw in terms of his first initial engagement as he came on to Opportunity International team, Paul, don't worry. I did promise you that I would not share that photo anymore. But ultimately, his first few weeks were spent sitting on the floors of the homes of the farmers that we work with. And really, at the end of the day, the capacity for us to listen is really key. How do we take time to actually hear from clients, and to both Anders' points and Webster's points, build on that human interface is really key. That cascades across not just how we implement and how we develop new tools, but also how do we engage with funding partners? How do we look at strategies that are not just 5-year logical framework, but really give opportunities to engage with those points of friction that happen in real time with clients and can only really be discovered when sharing a plate of boiled ground nuts on the floor of our clients' houses. So really high tech can only really have high impact if we invest in high touch interfaces in there. Thanks, Amma.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I know our time is up, but briefly from all of you, and I'll obviously again start with Anders, give us an idea from a few years in the future of where AI might be a game changer for the lives of a rural farmer in a developing country. Anders, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Alma. I'll be brief. So, and simultaneously respond to the excellent question by Mr. Totolo. So it doesn't have to be far into the future, this. I see that a farmer can easily verify location and size of farm with a mobile phone. That's the only interaction needed before a credit provider or even a set of credit providers automatically send out offers for a menu of different opportunities available, all tailored to land, culture, life situation, and market access, like Tim touched upon here. Agency is important, so I think there is an opportunity to choose from the menu provided in her own language, and the AI-assisted system will make the required capital available as soon as well, I want to say humanly possible, but I guess we're doing this as a non-human thing, and can provide that capital immediately and coupled with advice for a change into, for example, a cash crop. And when the capital and the associated work that needs to be put in has been deployed, the farmer can verify that the cash crop is ready to be collected. Then a set of off-takers can bid for the access to that cash crop or through the coffee beans, and she agrees directly via the mobile phone with the best bidder. And then on the buyer side, transport is automatically organized, and together with the actual delivery, they receive a full and valuable data package compliant with data directives such as deforestation, supply chain reporting, quality assessment. All automated. I think we're not far from doing this already. And it's so important that we know that the data delivered is valuable and that should be owned by the farmer. It's a commodity in itself, the data about how the crop has been grown. That is so important and increases the value and the ease of getting it into more high-paying markets. And then the farmer uses her dividends to further invest.
Anders, I'm going to have to cut you because our time is really up.
Thank you.
We need to continue this conversation again. Webster, final words from you. Very brief. You're on mute, Webster.
Yes, thanks a lot. Briefly speaking, I wanted to just concur with everyone that indeed with time, we just have to accept the fact that things have changed. And that being the case, I would wish to suggest that if we consider to scale up the use of the Ulangizi AI, that one is the way to go for. It will have got a greater impact on the farming communities, and indeed, so it as far as production of food and indeed reduction of poverty is concerned, because farmers are getting several kind of information from issues to do with climate change, issues to do with how they can do the village savings and how they can get loans and everything just like that. And finally, also, I would also wish to, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your perspectives. I'm aware that even as just you individually are on this panel, you are represented by a lot of men and women who are working really, really hard to make sure that, you know, we improve the livelihood of farmers around the world. Climate and other global issues carry so much risk for those of us who are living in extreme poverty, and that risk is heightened by the risk of financial institutions that often support these very same people. But at the same time, there is hope. There's hope that AI has the potential to impact our support for these populations, even in the face of growing challenges. And to reiterate what Anders said, there is no magic recipe. We all need to put in the work and ensure that we are doing what we all can to improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers who are obviously living in some of the hardest hit parts of the world. I know a lot of our audience had so many questions. I know my colleagues have been trying to, you know, answer them as we go along. I would like to please share this as well. I'm going to share information. If you have any questions after this panel for us as opportunity, if there is more that you'd like to know, I would urge you to please reach out to us on our various social media platforms, and also at this email address, elongizi@opportunity.org. Our team is ever ready to provide all of the answers that you need. Like we said earlier on at Opportunity, we are a partner-rich organization, and partnership is really key to the work that we do. Again, to my panelists, thank you so much. To Greg and to Paul, thank you. To the Financial Inclusion Week, thank you as well for having us. And to our audience, you have been amazing. Thank you, everyone. And we hope you enjoyed this session. We hope you keep the conversations going wherever you find yourself. Thank you all. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.